Welcome back to our live coverage of the climax of the Vendée Globe race. I'm Alec Wilkinson, with me is Dee Kafari and Will Harris. We've been watching and commentating on this incredible climax of the closest Vendée Globe finish ever. And Bureau Valet came in second place. Those were the last images that we were able to bring you with Louis Burton on board. He led Bureau Valet across the line as the second boat. And as he celebrated, the man who crossed the line first, Charlie Dalin, on board a PVA, was also celebrating on the dock. So Louis Burton was the last man we saw cross the finish line. And we'll be able to hear from him in a second, and then I'll bring you right up to date with where we are in the race, where the finishers are. We do have a winner.
Il y a une grande joie évidemment de retrouver les proches, de savoir d'où on revient et d'être enfin là au calme, en dehors de tout danger, etc. Et puis là, ça a une saveur particulière parce que c'est couper la ligne en deuxième position et c'est un truc de dingue dans l'absolu. Et voilà, et avec la course que j'ai eu à vivre en plus, ça a une saveur absolument dingue pour moi. Je sais qu'il y a un truc qui m'a toujours accroché au moment où j'allais abandonner, c'était de penser à mes deux petits loups qui sont tout jeunes et qui avaient absolument pas envie que j'abandonne parce que je pense qu'ils avaient peur que ce soit la honte à l'école, tu vois. Et en fait, je pense que c'est pour eux. Et puis après, c'est pour Servan, pour mon équipe, pour mon père là-haut, voilà. Mais c'est pour les autres en tout cas. C'est pour les autres, pour terminer pour les autres. Et c'est ça qui m'a permis d'avoir cette énergie-là à chaque fois.
Dedicating his race to his children and his
thing, because he was saying that, you know, at times he wanted to give up. He had a lot of issues, technical issues we talked about, but he said he couldn't give up because he was afraid that his kids would be shamed at school. So I'm sure that's not the case, but, you know, what a way to drive yourself forwards by knowing that your kids are following your move and setting the right impression for them.
And since this was filmed, he's given a press conference and said, yeah, he hopes to be back and go do even better in the next Vendée Globe race. So congratulations to the man from St. Malo. We're now looking out across the very quiet port, but it's going to get quite loud and colourful very soon because we have a winner, an overall winner, and it is Yannick Bestaven, who crossed the line in third place about 45 minutes ago after 80 days, 13 hours, 59 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, it doesn't look like it in these pictures, but about an hour ago, the weather was absolutely atrocious out in the water, out where the finish line is. There were strong waves. We've got about 20 knots of wind out there, and it just wasn't possible to bring you those images live from the water. It wasn't safe. So we couldn't do that, but we will bring you the celebratory shots as he proceeds up the canal, up to this pontoon where he'll be presented with the trophy, the champagne, and where the celebrations will begin in earnest. So Yannick Bestaven on Metrocoque coming in third, and the reason that he takes the overall win is because, of course, he was given a time compensation for taking part in that rescue of Kevin Escoffier earlier on in the race. He had 10 hours and 15 minutes compensation up his sleeve. And, well, in the end, he crossed the line with quite a bit of time to spare.
He did, but he didn't take his foot off the throttle. He was literally coming in. He positioned himself really well, so he had fewer manoeuvres to do coming into that finish line. and he could just sail fast and straight in. And while we're going to see images now of Yannick coming in and knowing that not only has he crossed the finish line of the Vendée Globe, of which he last attempted to do in 2008,
and there are
unsuccessfully.
First pictures of him, and as you can see on the graphic, number 1 means he is first overall. Charlie Dalin, who crossed the line and took line honours, will take second overall, and Louis Burton, who we've just heard from, will slip down to third place. But basically, the 3 boats that finished in the first 3 places in the race are on the podium.
They've just rearranged themselves a little bit, but it's been quite unanimous that nobody has a problem. That allocation from the international jury was given back on the 16th of December for an incident that happened at the end of November when Kevin Escoffier had his boat PRB sink beneath him and boats went on standby. There were 4 boats involved. Sebastian Simon retired, so it was just Boris Herman, Yannick Bestaven and Jean Le Cam who were involved in the time redress or the time compensation for the rescue given. And nobody knew back then how it was going to play out at all. You couldn't have imagined, you couldn't have written the script, even if you were a Hollywood producer, that this race would be so to the wire for at least 5 boats coming into the finish. And then add on top of that the time allowance that will shuffle the pack again. It is quite amazing. And given the times we're living in where we all have various restrictions in place, they're coming into Le Sable d'Olonne in the Bay of Biscay in France. The Vendée region, it has a curfew, and the mayor has put in place dispensation to allow 300 volunteers to be a guard of honour as the boats come down the channel there. So we saw some scenes and we'll see them, they've got flares to light the way. So that achievement and that sense that you get from everybody supporting you and cheering you, not only will it be just from the balconies as we saw when they departed on the 8th of November, but they're going to be people out braving the weather, cheering in these heroes. And it really will be something quite special, and I think Yannick will be very emotional with this finish.
And well, I'm going to bring you in because behind this Metrocoque boat is Thomas Ruyant on linked out, and he's a few minutes away.
Just 2 miles from the finish line.
He's 2 miles from the finish line, so he'll be coming in very shortly in 4th place. And then somewhere out there, just behind them, is Boris Herman. You know, you're part of that team, Will. He's had a disastrous evening. For those of you just joining us, he, about 90 miles out from the finish line, he hit a fishing vessel, which damaged his boat very badly, but he is managing to limp back to the finish line. So where are we at with that, Will? What's the latest?
Yeah, so recently Boris has managed to make a jibe and start pointing back towards the finish line. Obviously, after he had that collision, we understood from him that he had broken off the bowsprit of the boat, the very front end of the boat, and also had damage to the starboard side rigging and also to the foil. And basically what I think Boris wanted to do and what's been done with the team is secure and make sure that that starboard side of the boat's rigging is all functioning and working well again, and is kind of in a setup that can allow him to slowly make his way to the finish. And he's made that jibe now and is slowly able to cruise into the finish. And it's going to be quite interesting now between Thomas and Boris. You know, we didn't really expect to see this once the collision happened earlier. You know, we were completely devastated as a team, and the goal just became to finishing the race. But right now there's a slim chance that Boris might be able to sneak away the 4th place from depending on how quickly he makes his way to the finish. Right now,
the first fireworks off the coast of Le Sable d'Olonne, celebrating the arrival of the winner of this 9th edition of the race, Yannick Bestaven on Metrocoque, in his 2nd attempt at the race. His first was aborted in 2008. He only got as far as the Bay of Biscay. and it's taken him a long time to come back to the race, to build a project that he could believe in. And my goodness, it really has worked. Look at that. Le Sable d'Olonne celebrates. It's 5:40, 20 to 6 in the morning there. And many of the local residents, certainly those with balconies overlooking the port, have been out supporting the skippers as they've come in through the night. But it still remains a surreal scene, Dee, because we'd expect hundreds of thousands of people to be there for the arrival of the winner. But unfortunately, it's not to be. I mean, this race is the town, isn't it?
It is. It brings it to life. It attracts people from not only all over France, but globally to come. It's like a mecca every 4 years. They're there when the boats depart, and it generally doesn't matter to the people that support this race if you're the first boat in or the last boat in. The achievement that you have in sailing around the world is something quite special, and they will celebrate every skipper. So it's lovely that even despite the restrictions that are in place, so many boats have been out on the water, and there's been that allowance to come in. The fireworks are still going, as we see when we've seen the other winners on previous editions. So Yannick gets his moment of glory to savour, and something that he probably was unaware of whether this was going to happen to him as he battled his way around the world. He's had his own issues. He's been jostling at the front in various places, but he's had his setbacks and had to come back from a few losses of miles. I mean, he rounded Cape Horn 400 miles ahead of second place Charlie Dalin at that point, and saw that lead whittle away, and then he became a back marker, having to chase down that pack ahead of him.
And it was a lead. It was a lead that he held since Christmas, and to see that just chipped away and chipped away, that must be psychologically very difficult to deal with, Will.
Yeah, I mean, to have had that sudden moment in the South Atlantic where, what's quite typical in ocean racing is you'll see the rich getting richer. So the boats that are ahead will manage to get into a new weather system further ahead of the other boats, and that will effectively mean they can ride the train and just extend their lead more and more coming into the finish. But what actually happened was this complete park up of the front boats, and it just allowed a reset of the top 8 boats basically. And I think at the same time it was coupled with Yannick having problems after rounding Cape Horn. He had mentioned that he'd got into difficulty and had a big broach, a big wipeout in the final stages of the Southern Ocean, and as a result he lost some of his furling gear, things he used to control the sails at the front of the boat, and as a result we saw him sailing slower on that approach back up to the Goldens on the way back up, and it would just be so hard to have that lead just taken away from you. And he's done such an incredible job now to keep motivated and to keep pushing, even though he knows his boat hasn't been at 100%. And I think those times up there in the top left corner, you just can't comprehend how close that is. It's a race that's taken over 80 days to complete, and we have the top 3 boats within 7 hours. It's just mind-boggling to think that it's come down to such a close thing. The top 2 there separated by only 2.5 hours is just absolutely incredible. And one small maneuver, one small mistake would look back into every single point in the race and say he's happy with how he's Vendée Globe.
These races are getting closer every 4 years. Alex Thompson was hot on the heels of Arnaud Leclerc last time round. Is it just a coincidence that we've had a few races that have been close, or do you think there's something in the technology or the way that these trainers operate that mean?
I mean, I think that it's got to be something to do with competing against each other in the sense that if you have a boat near you, you're always using them as a reference to how fast you're going, and always trying to consider your strategy. Although it's always important to sail your own race, you're always looking over your shoulder or looking ahead at what the other boats are doing. And as a result, especially with modern day technology where we can track boats for every what we have at the moment, we have the tracker every 4 hours. That's enough to really be able to follow or see exactly what the rest of the fleet are doing. And as a result, you end up with these kind of bunches and different packs or clumps in the fleet where they all stick together and are all pushing against each other and kind of jumping up and down against each other. And that's probably what's led to these races and the recent years being so much closer and coming down to the line into the final few hours.
It's interesting. Jeremy Bailey said exactly the same, that he sounds a lot happier when there's other boats around him. It allows him to have a reference and a challenge, so he can set his goals and line up against them and try and push himself forwards. But previous editions, we've seen boats finish on the same day, just a few hours apart, but that's just been the first and second place boat. Generally, everybody else has been days after that. So to have this many boats, or this volume of boats, finish within this time period is quite unique, quite special, and it's more reminiscent of a regatta style event rather than a round the world event. And to have the deltas getting smaller and smaller is testament to the way the guys are sailing, how hard they're pushing them. But we talk about the evolutions of the boats and the new technology and the foiling boats, but two of the boats in the top 4 are 2015 generation boats. And then we're going to look, and boat number, Damien Segan's coming in with Giancarlo Pedotti, and he's in the first non-foiling boat, closely followed by Jean Le Cam and Benjamin Detraux. So we've got a real mix of ages of boats from 2008, 2015, and brand new for this edition. So, you know, weather, the sailor, the reliability, and the performance of the boat all have to come together to make a sweet spot.
I think while we just had these images there, you can see the front of the boat there, the pulpit, kind of the safety corner right at the front of the boat. This is what Yannick mentioned when he was going through the doldrums that he'd lost in that wipeout, and you can see how that netting around the edge of the boat disappears at the front. And to imagine what might have caused that is just quite incredible, whether it was a huge wipeout. Hopefully we'll get to hear a bit later a bit more about exactly what happened there, but you know, he's had to overcome these problems in this remounting of the Atlantic, heading back up north to the finish, and there's been the problems associated with that, and yeah, it must be such a relief and such a feeling of achievement to have overcome all these problems and still manage to finish where he has done.
Well, we talk about resilience, and it takes a lot of resilience to come back after you've lost a 400-mile lead, but also to come back from you know, his very first Vendée Globe, which was in the year that you competed, Dee.
That's right, 2008. He didn't even get out the Bay of Biscay and he'd dismasted. So
A long journey back.
definitely, he's had to work really hard to find enough confidence in a project that he felt happy with to go forward. And I think it's been, you know, a long time coming, but it's made him hungry. This boat he actually bought, it was Safran in 2016 with the skipper Morgan Le Gravier. And he went to Roland Jourdan, who had the boat, and worked on a project with him. They did a lot of sailing together. So Billy's got huge amounts of experience. So they would have really developed how they wanted to move the boat forwards and suit Yannick's sailing style. In the meantime, what's quite interesting is he used his engineering background and he developed Watt and Sea, which is his company. And we talk about clean technology and clean energy. All these boats are carrying hydro generators, and they're all Watt and Sea generators. So he's helped move our sport forwards and be cleaner and greener, and he's part of that. And he started working from that right from 2008, the year he came out of the Vendée Globe early. He was testing it on his boat, and he was committed to making it happen. And it's great to see now that every single boat carries a hydro generator. And he was testing one of a new design on his boat, where the hydro generator then lifts into the air and will become a wind generator. So it'd be really interesting to see how that evolves now that he's had experience and tested it in quite an extreme race course.
And that's using water.
Hydro generators are, the propellers are in the water, they turn through the forward motion and generate the power.
And then we go, the players, the classic moment. Yeah, the moment that all the photographers have been waiting for, and the one that'll make all the front pages in France. Well, probably not this morning, but tomorrow. A bit late for the front pages, but there he is, Yannick Bestaven on Metcot, completing the Vendée Globe at his second attempt and claiming race victory. Fantastic stuff from him as the fireworks go off again in the Bestaven Dalin. His family and supporters are waiting on the pontoon, on the red carpet, waiting for him to come in. He already has some of his team around him. And by this stage, all the formalities have been dealt with. You know, the measurers have been on, they've signed off what needs to be signed off. This is now just about celebrating the moment. And he's going to be pulled left, right and centre for the next few weeks. He is, I mean, this is, as I've said, front page news in France. It'll make all the news bulletins, live coverage on French TV of this. Well, the few French that hadn't heard of him before the race will certainly know all about him.
Yeah, he'll have very little time to rest and allow this to sink in and digest it, because he'll be on a stream of interviews for the next week, I would imagine.
And he's enjoying every second of this.
Well, let's face it, he's fought hard from it. We've talked about the issues he's had, and they're just the ones we know about. And I'm sure there's a lot more on his boat that he hasn't told us that will slowly come out over time. But he's been a real good definition of tenacity and resilience, and get it to the end. And if ever we needed an example of that this time, it's come at the perfect time.
And it's also, it's been really impressive to see how he's dealt with the fact that he is sailing on an older generation boat. It was a boat that competed in the last edition of the race, and it hasn't been upgraded in terms of its foil package. And he's managed to really make it perform just at the same level and higher than all later generation boats. And he's really always looking at how to get 100% out of his boat, and always making sure that he's found ways to keep up and to keep pushing the boat as high as he can. But it's really impressive to see him being able to do that, and to be able to have a boat that can keep up and can perform as technologies are developed and things move forward in these IMOCA 60 boats.
You wouldn't know there was a pandemic right now, would you? Looking at that lot, it's fantastic to see so many people on the water to celebrate this moment.
So there is a nighttime curfew in France, but as Dee was explaining earlier on, there's been special dispensation for 300 volunteers to come and wave flares along the Canal, the kind of iconic channel that takes the boats to and from the water, from the heart of Le Sable d'Olonne, from the marina there.
The ever-ready bucket with the flares. It looks like it's still going on. The last thing he needs to do now is have a small fire on his boat.
What a shot that is, just with the red fireworks in the background and the red colour of
yeah,
just an amazing shot. Amazing view.
It exemplifies what this race means to not just the people of Le Sable d'Olonne, but of France, and it means a whole lot more this year in particular. And the fact that the podium is a 1-2-3 to France as well just adds to the joy of this very French race that keeps getting more and more international every edition, but continues to be dominated by French sailors.
I hope that this drives the tenacity and determination for the international field to come and take part in this race and try and break the French stronghold. They rejoice in it becoming more international. They invite people to come and join it, but we've yet to show them how it's done. So I encourage everybody to, if this is what they want to do, it's dud flare. If this is what they want to do, then 4 years' time, start line, hey, Will.
Yeah, it was great to see Boris trying to push his way, trying to break his way into the top three, and after such an unlucky night last night, I think there's going to be a lot of international sailors hungry to try and topple the French off their podium. We had Alex the last two editions of the race break into the podium, and we'll just have to see how the future plays out. But it's such a fascinating race, such a adventurous race. It really does attract the best sailors and kind of the most daring sailors there are out there to try and have a shot at it and to compete. And Yannick has just managed to top all of them, and it's an amazing job that he's done to be able to come back from that, from initially being ahead and then to drop back in that during the doldrums and a bit in the final stage of the race, and to be able to cling on by 2.5 hours is just incredible.
It's great. We've had success on breaking the podium before. Ellen MacArthur in second place, Mike Golding second place, Alex a third and a second, and he's dedicated 20 years of his life to
Yannick,
try and win this event.
Qu'est-ce qui se passe dans la tête là?
Je sais pas, j'ai l'impression de vivre un rêve, d'halluciner quoi. Ah, ça fait bizarre, hein, on passe de la solitude au total à ça quoi. À cette fête, ces lumières, ces gens qui sont là malgré le contexte compliqué. Ouais, c'est un bonheur, je réalise pas encore ce qui se passe, je suis encore toujours dans ma course alors que c'est terminé, mais ouais, c'est un rêve d'enfant qui se réalise.
Racontez-nous ces derniers jours, là, ce décalage dans l'ouest et cette option nord, c'était l'option de la dernière chance?
Ouais, c'est l'option surtout qui me convenait le mieux par rapport à mon bateau et au voile que j'avais aussi. Il fallait que j'aille chercher du vent fort, je suis allé chercher les deux dépressions, les deux fronts dépressionnaires. Et vu que j'étais cinquième, ça ne servait à rien de suivre derrière. Donc ouais, j'ai pas hésité et c'est comme ça que j'ai pu me refaire après avoir beaucoup perdu au large du Brésil. Donc ça a été impressionnant ce Vendée Globe, ça n'a pas arrêté de faire le yo-yo, c'est toujours revenu par derrière. C'était pas bon d'être premier en fait. Quand moi j'étais premier, je me suis fait reprendre. Là, Charlie, j'ai repris les heures suffisantes pour passer devant, avec le temps de compensation. Mais ouais, on n'a pas chômé, ouais. Ça a été une régate à l'échelle planétaire.
Vous avez connu des moments difficiles et même dans ces moments-là, vous y avez toujours cru?
Ouais, il y a eu des moments difficiles, toujours cru. J'ai toujours cru arriver au Sable d'Olonne, ouais, ça sûr. Après, à quelle place à un moment, j'ai cru pouvoir gagner quand je passe le Cap Horn en tête. Après, au large du Brésil, je me suis dit, tant pis, je ne gagnerai pas, mais déjà finir dans le 5, ça sera bien. Et ouais, j'ai toujours cru en mes chances parce que le bateau, je me sentais bien avec l'équipe, on l'a beaucoup préparé, on a beaucoup préparé ce Vendée Globe. Donc je savais que j'avais un bateau fiable, je pouvais tirer dessus, j'étais en confiance. Ouais.
Vous parliez de régate planétaire, comment expliquez-vous que ça a été la régate de bout en bout, le match de bout en bout?
D'une part, grâce aux conditions météo qui ont fait que c'est jamais parti par devant. Même moi, à un moment donné, j'ai cru partir, mais non. Et donc ça s'est toujours regroupé, ça a toujours recollé. On a eu des conditions difficiles dans les mers du Sud, où les foilers n'ont pas fait la différence sur les bateaux à dérive, parce que la mer était trop mauvaise, notamment dans l'Indien. Il fallait attaquer au bon moment. Mais c'est vrai que ça a été souvent très serré, c'est encore serré quand on voit le nombre de bateaux qui arrivent dans le golfe de Gascogne. Là, en quelques journées, là, c'est énorme, c'est énorme, c'est du jamais vu, c'est historique.
Qu'est-ce qui est le plus difficile dans un Vendée Globe?
Il y a tellement de choses difficiles dans un Vendée Globe. Le Vendée Globe, c'est dur, on croit avoir pensé à tout imaginer, et on doit aller chercher des ressources bien profondes en soi. Ce qui est dur, c'est le stress avec ces bateaux qui sont violents, qui sont stressants, bruyants. Vivre en permanence sur le qui-vive, à l'écoute du bateau, dans des conditions difficiles. L'humidité, le froid, la solitude parfois aussi. Il y a plein de choses qui sont difficiles dans le Vendée Globe.
Avant le départ, je vous avais demandé comment vous imaginiez votre Vendée Globe. Est-ce que c'était conforme à vos attentes?
Ouais, c'était même au-delà de mes attentes. Ouais, j'avais imaginé plein de choses, mais j'en ai vécu plein d'autres en fait. Et ouais, c'est au-delà de mes attentes. Et puis voilà, et puis le finish, il est top, quoi. Avoir galéré comme on a galéré pour finir comme ça en apothéose et apporter une victoire à Maître Coq, pour moi, c'est un rêve, quoi.
Merci Yannick.
Merci à toi.
So, a big smile on Yannick Bestaven's face. Said he's living a dream, and he just can't believe the lights and all the people that have managed to come down in these difficult circumstances. There was this split, wasn't there, amongst the leaders in the stages of the race, and he chose to go north. He said to search for stronger breeze.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear him say that there was that big split, and yeah, he was in search of that depression as it arrived, but also he was saying there that it was due to, he thought that it was the best conditions for his boat. So it really goes to show that he's learned his boat and he understands it well and knows exactly where to put it and what's the best course to sail. So yeah, that was great to hear.
He described the race. That's a great picture, isn't it? That'll grace the mantelpiece in the family home forever. Yeah, describing the race like a yo-yo, with the lead changing all the time.
And I think that yo-yo effect is really untypical of kind of a Vendée Globe. What you'd normally expect is the leaders would be able to kind of jump forward, pick up the next weather system, and he was saying there as well, it was always the boats coming from behind who always had the advantage, and that's just kept the ranking board really active and really hot and always flicking between different places, and
that's the trophy. That's the trophy that he'll be presented with. He waves to the crowd. They're just helping stop that boat.
It's interesting when he referred to it actually being hard and noisy and violent, uncomfortable, the pressure, the stress. And I think it's too easy to just remember the good bits, and actually they work really hard to make this happen, physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. It's a commitment from them, the team and the family to make this happen. So he's basking in the glory, but I think there's an element of utter relief and joy for everybody who's involved in this project. And the sponsors are going to be loving it. They were involved as with Jeremy Bayou 4 years ago and finished on the podium in third.
Yeah.
And here they are on the podium in the top spot.
Yeah, a great history in the race, Maître Coq. They're a chicken.
Chicken. Don't count your chickens before the hatch.
But yeah, I mean, what for you, Dee, when you came in, and there's confirmation of his in time, that's with the compensation taken off. What was your sort of, overbearing sentiment and emotion? Was it relief? Was it excitement? What was it you felt?
It was incredible because you're fueled by adrenaline. You've achieved something that seemed, unthinkable before the start. You've sailed around the world on your own in this race, and it's a war of attrition. We've seen 8 boats drop out in this race, which has been the lowest percentage ever, but you know that fellow sailors have not managed something that you've just achieved by crossing the line. Everyone's cheering and shouting, and it's a little overwhelming because you've been on your own for so long, and suddenly you're interacting with all these people, and everyone's like, imagine you're tired, and these guys will be broken from the hard work they've just put in, but you're also a bit overexcited and you want to share every single moment with it. So, and having other people to talk to is actually quite exciting beyond a video call or a satellite communication or an email. So this face-to-face communication is a little overexciting. So you got quite a lot to tell them, and you're actually not used to sleeping and switching off. You've been on the edge, listening to your boat, relating to your boat, making life and death decisions for 80 days. It's quite hard to just turn that all off straight away. It takes a little while to process. And I didn't come in as a winner and with fireworks, so you know, I can only imagine that it's just a little bit more exaggerated in that position.
Okay, it's going to be a few more minutes before I think he gets to the red carpet and gets to the presentation on the podium. I think we should take a moment to talk about, you know, the sailors that are still out there, because we've got the top three, and Thomas Ruyant has now finished.
Yes, he has finished
It's out.
80 days, 15 hours, 22 minutes, 1 second, which is actually relevant because everybody who's going to be cheering for Boris Herrmann will have started the stopwatch. He gets a 6-hour time allowance. If he comes in within 6 hours of Thomas's time, then he's going to swap places with him on the finish ranking.
Sorry, Will, go on.
It's interesting how it's all coming into play like this. Thomas just seemed to have a slightly slower moment there coming into that finish, and you know, after what happened to Boris earlier, it kind of seemed like that was him for this final approach. But yeah, Thomas will just be coming up the channel shortly, and we just had a slightly slower patch there, which has meant that Boris is right on the edge of being within the 6 hours and kind of at the 5-hour mark at the moment, depending on how quickly he makes his way down to the course. But obviously, he's really going to be taking care of his boat and trying to make sure it's in an okay state to get to the finish. And here we have some images of Thomas here. He's just entered the channel. This is Thomas and linked out, and you can straight away see that port foil, the one he had to cut off earlier in the South Atlantic on his almost at the after day 20 in the race.
Yeah, that's a stunning image of that foil, the first we've seen properly from this angle, certainly. So that is Thomas Ruyant.
And I think at this point it's really good to bring up how well he's performed, considering he's not had that foil. You know, if we look at the top 5 boats, they are all foilers, and Thomas really, a lot of the journey back up the Atlantic has been on starboard tack, which is obviously the port foil. So he hasn't really been a foiler, although he's managed to stay in this top 5 pack. And as well as that, coming to the finish the last few days, him and Yannick both chose this northerly option, which involved a lot of time sailing on starboard tack. And Thomas managed to really fend off Yannick right to the end, where Yannick just managed to cross the line ahead of him. But you know, I've heard reports from Thomas saying he had to basically learn how to sail a boat on port and on starboard. He had, on one hand, he had a boat that was foiling, and on the other hand, he had a boat that was kind of a daggerboard, half foiling boat situation. He's done really well to just keep pushing the boat and keep persevering, and you know, has managed to finish in the top 5.
An incredible stat is that he's been in the top 3 for 72% of the race, despite losing that foil.
He has. He's done a remarkable job because it happened relatively early, and rather than feel, oh, I'm hindered and be frustrated because he's been at the front, you could argue that it's probably the worst place for him to finish in 4th place. But it's actually not the case at all. All of these sailors were in the mix, and all of these sailors would have jumped at the chance of a 5th place on departure day when 33 boats set off. So, you know, they're all delighted with what they've done. And now they'll be able to reflect and analyse and look back and go through the damage, how they dealt with it, the strategy, the tactics they made, review their race, because it's all learning for next time. And I'm sure we're going to see a number of these sailors back again. Thomas, don't forget, in the last edition, didn't get round the world. He stopped in New Zealand, barely saving his boat from sinking beneath him as it broke in half. So we could have had a very easy Kevin Escoffier moment then. He did an amazing job nursing that boat back to shore and keeping himself safe. So he'll be delighted to have achieved a Cape Horn rounding and a full lap of the planet, and in what's been a remarkable race, and he's part of history here.
And the race isn't over, obviously. There are still people out there, but at the moment, Ruyant can boast having covered the most distance in 24 hours so far in the race, 515 nautical miles. That's a lot of mileage on a sailing boat.
Yeah, it's really impressive to be doing that sort of distance in 24 hours. But just so we get these images, I'm looking at the front of the boat there, and the bowsprit is looking like it's broken at some point, and he's had to do some sort of jury rig at the front there. I'm not sure if it was ever announced that he'd broken the bowsprit, but that would have been a massive hindrance to him in the race. And
isn't it? Because we've had so many videos, so much communication from all these boats and all these skippers, but it's interesting that they've kept back a lot of the crucial information that they don't want their competitors to know.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see them come up the channel. We can almost look at these images and spot each of the different kind of things and each of the problems that they've had on the boats, but. To lose a bowsprit is absolutely huge and a massive. It's what you put most of your downwind and reaching sails on. So it'll be great to hear from Thomas later exactly how he's had to deal with that and for how long he's had that problem. And to keep that secret right to the finish is very, very impressive.
Yeah, a lot of damage to that boat. It's.
Like the vinyl and paint wear and tear, that's
never
wave action. It doesn't look as good on the way in as it did on the way out, but it's got a story to tell when it comes in, a bit beaten and battered and bruised like the skipper.
And physically, we talk a lot about possibly hunger if they haven't got their food supply right, but tiredness especially. The stress of being constantly on the alert, but it takes its toll, kind of physically. It manifests itself in obvious ways. We've had black eyes and people bumping their heads, and actually you can really see the damage on the front of the boat there, can't you now?
Yeah,
it's really interesting to know when that happened, as you say, Will, because we were commenting on how much slower he'd suddenly got on his way in. So. It could have been as late as the last few hours.
Yeah, that could have been reaching in very fast at the finish there. But we'll hopefully hear a little bit about that later. But it's interesting you bring up that point about the kind of energy reserves and the food they have on board. Just to think these sailors have been in a completely bizarre polyphasal sleep routine for 80 days, and then coming into those final few days at the finish there, where they were pushing. To the absolute limit to try and gain every minute they could. I'm sure that all these skippers are absolutely exhausted, and Thomas coming from a Figaro background, he's used to kind of doing 3 or 4 day legs where he's not sleeping much at all, 1 or 2 hours a day, and I'm sure he will have gone into some sort of phase and kind of routine in that, and really been pushing the boat to the absolute limit at the end there. But now to come into the finish to all this atmosphere, I'm sure they've just got a whole new level of adrenaline boost at the whole atmosphere that's going on in the Barcelona right now.
It gives you a second wind, and you suddenly find all this energy that you didn't know you had. And I think a little of it is nervous energy, it's excitement, as you say, it's adrenaline, and it's just that kind of thrill for what you've just achieved and realization of what you've just been through and the result it's had. But it's amazing, actually. It takes a lot longer than they think for the bodies and the minds to recover. And that's where, everybody, the first question the media always want to ask is, so what's next? Will you go again? And, invariably, you just think, yeah, because I know I can do it better. But it's really important that the skippers give their bodies time to recover. And it's on so many levels, both physically and emotionally. And some skippers, it takes a lot longer than others because it's just so draining, so completely exhausting that they don't realise how low their energy levels have got.
And psychologically, how difficult is it to suddenly, integrate back into your family unit?
Well, it's very different these days. With them all having WhatsApp, they're pretty much in touch and communicating all the time. So it's completely changed that. They feel quite in tune with what family and friends and the team have been doing and saying. There's a lot more interaction than there ever used to be. And the hardest thing is just that switching off for daytime and nighttime, you know, where you're expected to go to sleep for the whole night. That's kind of a strange concept for them when they first come back. They're still used to just catnapping and getting up for the slightest noise, because that noise has been a big decision that they've had to make where they've been in tune with their boats. So not having the responsibility is lovely, but it takes a little bit of time to actually take those reactions out of your system and be able to live a normal life. You kind of oversensitized to external influences because you've just had you and your boat and the weather to deal with, and now suddenly there's a lot more things influencing you and a lot more people want to talk to you.
Happy reunion, Thomas Ruyant and his family, his second attempt at the Vendée Globe. And as we watch these two men, we should also talk about a humongous battle going on for 6th and 7th place between Paralympian sailor Damien Seguin and Giancarlo Pedotta of Italy. And they really are cat-maps.
They have been matching each other for speed. Giancarlo is on a foiling boat and just has the advantage now. He's got just over 80 miles to go, and Damien's just under 90 miles. So there's a little bit of a split, but there's a couple of maneuvers still to go. And of course, they're also looking at Boris, because they could all be arriving at a similar time, although Boris has the 6-hour allowance, we need to remember. But it'll be another busy finish line in about 4 to 5 hours time when these guys come steaming into the finish. But Damien Seguin there is currently in 7th place and is the first non-foiling boat. And he's taken single-handed sailing to the extreme, born without a hand. He's gone to show that it doesn't actually matter who you are. If your will is there and you want to do it, you can perform. And he's just done an amazing job. I think, you know, sailor of the race in a way. People shouldn't be surprised because the sailing talent is there, but to sustain that from an Olympic background of 15 to 30-minute races into 80 days is quite impressive.
And he sailed such an amazing race, like you say, Dees. All his decisions during his tactical decisions were really smart the whole time, always thinking about what's best for his boat. Considering he hasn't got wheels, he was always able to push hard, and also he was taking advantage of the moments that having daggerboards were beneficial to him, trying to sail a slightly more direct, more upwind course, which is generally better for daggerboard boats. And also in the Southern Ocean, it was also much better to deal with some of the bigger wave conditions.
And just behind those two coming in is actually Jean Le Cam, which we mustn't forget. Again, a non-foiling boat who has 16 hours, 15 minutes compensation.
And he's got that compensation because of his rescue of Kevin Escoffier, which, whatever position Jean Le Cam finishes in, that rescue will undoubtedly make him the hero of this race, don't you think? I mean, it caught everyone's imagination. I did a little video on it and put it up on my Sailing Uncovered YouTube channel, and it just went mad. People just couldn't get enough of the story of the rescue, and yeah, we almost to the point where we forget that there were 3 other boats involved in that rescue. So, for those of you who kind of didn't follow the race that closely, it was Kevin Escoffier's boat pretty much, well, we don't really know what happened, but it just folded and sunk in about a couple of minutes. And Escoffier spent 12 hours in a life raft waiting for one of these rescue boats to pick him up, and in the end that was Jean Le Cam. And that is why we have this strange situation where the race is decided in favour of the man we're watching, Yannick Bestaven, and his time compensation for his part in that rescue.
Oh, well, that was really nice. That was Roland Jourdain giving him a hug and congratulations there.
And it's really great to see all these kind of meeting each of his team again, team, family members, friends. You know, although the skippers can contact people on a daily basis using WhatsApp and email and other messages, it's not until you're really there face to face that you can really portray exactly what you want to say to someone. And this is exactly the moment that they've been waiting for the last few months. That missing piece there again. It must be a really nice moment.
So do you think it's psychologically easier now for the skippers because there is so much more contact? It's easier to stay in touch with land, with people, with home.
I think it goes two ways. I think there's an element of you don't feel that far apart. There's always somebody there and you can interact with people, but also it's a massive distraction as well because you've got something else to do. So the person who's contacting you doesn't always know how you're feeling and what you're doing. But I've probably had more response from Sam Davies while she's doing the Vendée Globe than I do when she's at home because she's got a bit more time on her hands to answer the WhatsApp.
Sam Davies, one of the 3 British women competing in the Vendée Globe, unfortunately had to retire, put into Cape Town for repairs, but decided to continue outside the race, continue to finish the course. We're here from Yannick again.
Oh papa, ça va? Putain, je vous reconnais pas avec vos masques, vos bonnets, vous êtes tous... C'est quoi ce bal masqué? Ça va?
These dockside interviews are a chat, really, and a catch-up with friends that he hasn't seen for 80 days.
Alors quel effet ça fait?
Pour tout te dire, ça fait bizarre. Tu passes d'un monde où tu es tout seul, où il n'y a rien, toi et ton bateau, à cette arrivée en fanfare. Et l'accueil, merci pour l'accueil. Ouais, ben merci beaucoup pour tout ce que vous avez fait parce que j'avais peur qu'on arrive et qu'il n'y ait personne. Voilà. Mais vous avez vraiment fait des efforts et ça nous fait chaud au cœur après ce qu'on a vécu de voir ça, c'est exceptionnel. Je l'oublierai pas. Ouais. Non, tu vas pas tomber.
A bit nervous there, handing over a massive bottle of champagne across the distance that his foil is sticking out. I'm going to drop it in the water now.
Merci, mais oui. Oh, je me rappelle.
Avec Yannick, je sais pas où il est.
Avec les garçons.
Avec Yannick.
Ouais, portez chance.
Et avec Yannick, il est parti? Allez, on dégage.
Let's get the champagne moment.
Patricia there from Sadibo, the main sponsor of the event, is an expert at this. She put her hood up and turned away. Yet another bottle of champagne.
That's the moment he's been waiting for all this time. All those months of stress and pushing and trying to calculate if he's going to finish first. And he's done it. Really impressive.
I think I remember being told that after I sprayed the champagne, I smelled better than I did before I'd sprayed the champagne.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant smell getting on board those boats when they've just come in after going around the world.
What do you mean? It's full of roses.
Les gars, venez goûter le champagne un peu.
It's getting the rest of the team to come and be part of it. As we know, it is one person sailing around the world, but there's a whole team behind the preparation of these boats and each of the campaigns. Preparing the boat, making sure that it's fully ready to go, it's race ready, but you've also got the communication side, working with the sponsors, the partners, the managers, there's so many different parts of the team that kind of have to work together to make sure that everything works out accordingly, and how well it has done for Maitre Coq in this edition.
Talking of the team, the Apivia team have finally been allowed in with their boat.
It hasn't been Charlie Dalin out there, just to reassure everybody. He was allowed in and his team stayed on the boat, and now they've come in the channel and they're now tying the boat off on the dock.
They've been zigzagging up and down the bay for about 8 hours. So they'll be pleased to come in out of the cold. Now, you mentioned Sam Davis, one of 6 women in the race. 4 are still in it, and doing well. Clarisse Creme, best placed in 12th. And Pip Hare as well, of Great Britain, has really become quite a star of this race from the video interviews that she's been doing almost every day.
She's become a celebrity from it. She really has outsailed the boat. The boat's 20 years old. She's put on a performance that is beyond the boat. She's made some really good tactical decisions and has really pushed hard. And I think people have got a huge amount of respect for what she's done and are cheering her all the way. Isabel Josh is probably the saddest story. She was really positioned well with the fleet as they came around Cape Horn, in the mix with this leading pack on a great boat. And she'd had an issue with a keel ram, and so she'd put a dummy ram on that she had, which basically held the top of her keel right in the middle, and then that failed. So she basically had a free swinging keel in her boat that she couldn't control, which is very hazardous. She couldn't sail upwind and had to be very careful how she sailed, had to retire. And it took her a long time. It took her 10 days to get ashore, but she's made it to Salvador in Brazil, where her team met her, and they're sorting the boat out so that it can be sailed home. So that was the sad end of her race, and she was putting in a great performance at the front with these guys. So it would have been great to have a girl kind of pushing at the front on a foiling boat.
And Pip Hare also suffered, crack in the port side rudder stop. So she had her own problems and repairs to carry out. And there was something in one of her reports about the repair that she did that I found very interesting. She said she'd rehearsed the repair in Les Sables d'Olonne just before setting off. So how do you do that? How do you sort of prepare for potential repairs and rehearse them?
It's an interesting point. It's quite kind of one of the things you do in the build-up to the Vendée Globe is you'll have some written down the kind of the main procedures that you're quite likely to have to deal with during the race, whether it be climbing the mast, changing your rudder, changing the wind gear, something like this. This is what Pip will have gone through with her team on a dock or maybe even at sea, and just gone through step by step. And basically what it will allow Pip to do is, when she is put in this scenario where she's in the Southern Ocean and doing it by herself, she'll have had that collective group of people all thinking of different ideas and different ways to make her life as easy as possible, and to help her to change this rudder, because it's so difficult to change out a rudder on these boats by yourself, and especially in the conditions you had, the waves would have just been absolutely massive. And she'll have probably spent a day or two with her team just running through procedures like this, and luckily one of them was the rudder, which she ended up using. And that's such a big part of the race, is thinking through scenarios like this, listing them down, and thinking how can I increase my chances of not. But here we have the team of Maitre Coq having a cheer together and getting their photo finish.
One happy team, love that. I can confirm that actually Pip Hare's technical manager, Geoff Brown, was my technical manager. He worked with Mike Godding and Conrad Humphreys, and Conrad Humphreys in 2004 had to change his rudder on Motorola in just off the bay of Simonstown, just south of Cape Town. So he'd gone through the procedure, and as a result, I think that's one of Geoff's pet things, that if we're carrying a spare rudder, we need to know how to change it. I remember having to learn how to change mine, and just living in hope that I never had to do it. So I think Pip made the same comment, that she was like, yeah, please don't let me ever have to do it. So I think she was quite reassured she'd gone through the process, as you say, so she could do it. Thomas Ruyant stepping onto the dock there. Happy family. It's very busy on this dock tonight, isn't it?
It's very busy. But not as icy as it was 4 years ago for the arrival of Armel Leclerc and Alex Thompson. And celebrations for the man who brought Linked Out home. I wouldn't say in one piece, but in enough of a piece to get it across the finish line.
And that smile really says everything, doesn't it? You know, Tom has overcome a lot to be to this point. You know, he had to abandon the last edition of the race with that pretty devastating blow to his boat where it almost broke in half, like you were saying earlier. And to come in amongst one of the top 5 boats, I think he's got to be happy there. He's got to be pleased with his position there. And I don't doubt he'll be hungry for more in the next 4 years. It'll be interesting to see what he says after this, how he feels after a shower and a warm bit of food. But he's a very ambitious sailor and he's a very good sailor. I don't doubt that he'll want to come back to another one.
They've had a great project as well. Advents is his sponsor, and they put this cause-led project together with Linked Out, which is basically connecting people without a network to get one so that they can find work. And as a result of this project alone, they've now placed 37 people in work through this project, which I think is huge. It's actually only in France at the moment, but they will look to expand it. But it's really nice that his project's had such a positive effect on something that's quite different.
And every one of these teams has found a project to support, project or a charity, foundation. They've supported either financially or in practical terms, one for every team, which is good to see, because it's not just about the sport, but some good has come from this competition and from every team being in this competition. Probably one of the most successful was Sam Davis' initiative, which has seen people click on the Facebook page and like the Facebook page on the sponsor. And there is the man who took line on it, Charlie Dalin, on a PBA. He's reappeared, he's had his rest. I guess he's had a shower and some food, and is looking revived. He's crossing the line.
And that's one of the really special moments. You know, it's a real close bond the skippers have, and if you've been part of the Vendée Globe as a sailor or as a team, you get this unique family feel, and you've all gone through something very special, and it bonds you really well. And it's just so nice when the other skippers come up. I remember that was probably more important than my family at the time, when the other skippers were coming up. It's your peers acknowledging what you've done, and it means such a lot.
Well, the 3 on the dock at the moment there, Dalin, Bestaven and Ruyant, train together, work together. They're part of this group out in Western France, and they know each other and their boats very, very well.
And especially Thomas and Charlie there having identical hulls pretty much. They both have very similar designs and would have been really using each other as references in the build-up to this race. And in the end they chose slightly different shaped foils. It didn't end up to matter that much in the overall rankings, and Thomas had to cut off one of his foils. But yeah, the smiles when they first saw each other and kind of had that acknowledgement of each other was amazing. I'm sure both their faces are going to hurt from smiling by the end of tonight.
We're going to stay with these celebrations for a while longer, and we've seen the champagne being popped on board Yannick Bestaven's boat. There'll be celebrations to be had as well on Linked Out. And
Laurent, il est où Laurent?
Thomas.
Well, how have these teams sort of been able to decide, or how do they decide who would go down, dockside? Because there's a limit to the number of people allowed during this curfew and into the race village.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and especially this year will have been especially complicated. How do you actually deal with all the action that's going on a night like tonight? And you saw there Thomas, that's with most of his shore crew. I recognise quite a few of them from the Ruyant area. We were parked up right next to Linked Out for most of last year in the build-up to Wonder. I think they'll have had to. For sure, the shore crew will have a core team who takes the boat, will be responsible for making sure the boat reaches the dock safely. And then around that, you'll have had the communications, the logistics team dealing with the rest and making sure that Thomas is where he wants to be whenever he wants to be, I guess, and making the right appearances at the right time. It would have been a well-oiled and well-thought-out process before they even approach the finish line, and they will have a full plan in place ahead of this. But like you say, it's slightly more restricted this year. You can't bring anywhere near as many people to the finish as what you'd usually have. But these guys, they're well used to the boat, so they're very experienced at this.
Bon, allez, c'est pas fini.
Thomas, on te voit avec le sourire scotché au visage. C'est quoi l'état d'esprit là maintenant?
C'est beaucoup de bonheur et de satisfaction et de fierté. J'avais plein de sentiments sur l'eau, mais il n'y en a que certains là qui remontent à la surface avec une arrivée comme ça, de remettre le pied à terre, de retrouver la famille, et puis surtout d'avoir bouclé ce tour. Il y a 3 ans, il n'y avait pas de bateau, il n'y avait pas de partenaire, il n'y avait pas d'équipe, et là on a tout ça, ça va continuer, et je viens de boucler mon premier tour du monde, et c'est une très 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 grosse fierté. D'y arriver, c'était semé d'embûches. C'était pas un tour du monde facile. Et encore à quelques heures de l'arrivée, j'ai eu quelques petites bricoles. Donc grosse fierté, grosse satisfaction de moi et puis de toute l'équipe qui m'entoure. Je suis vraiment content de leur offrir ça, d'avoir fini ce tour. Et puis on a un bateau couleur de Linked Out aussi, et je pense que c'est un message important pour le sport en général, pour la voile, mais pour le sport. Et voilà, j'espère que là on a remis au boulot 40 personnes sur ce tour du monde. Moi mon tour du monde il s'arrête là, mais pour l'inclusion ça continue, pour le partage de CV aussi. Donc c'était aussi un des objectifs de ce tour du monde.
About Thomas Ruyant's interview, interesting as it was, to see this moment, the historic moment in
Tu sais qu'avant le départ, je l'ai embrassé quand même.
the trophy is presented to Yannick Bestaven, who has got the next around the world in 80 days, 3 hours, 44 minutes and 46 seconds, and the trophy is his.
Avec la bougie.
Je m'en occupe après. Allez, on avance.
Tout à l'heure.
He might be tired, but he's still got the strength to carry it. That's not a light trophy.
And he'll be very happy to be holding on to that after years of work. And his last attempt at this was in 2008. It really is a lifetime goal and an objective to be on the top of the podium of this race. And there you go, there you have it. He's done it, and he'll be absolutely chuffed with himself for that.
So the winner, that's a really big, heavy, beautiful trophy, and second and third get a slightly smaller one, and then everybody else that crosses the finish line gets a different colour. So we've all, those that have successfully, and out of the 160 plus starters, only 80, I think it's 89 now, there's a few more added tonight, first timers, have crossed the finish line. So there's only a few of us with those trophies on our mantelpiece.
I was going to say, where do you keep your trophy?
It's in the front room on the mantelpiece. I can see it every time I sit there.
And he wobbled his way up the ramp through the fans, but mostly it's press who have been accredited in the race village. Huge press in this race and in this winner.
Oh, how nice, that's Kevin Escoffier.
Embracing Kevin there. We helped rescue in the South Atlantic last year now. And this will be a very special moment for them to finally be able to speak in person after a very stressful, intense night at sea.
Very fast, sudden sinking, and we don't yet know what happened, really, do we?
No, but one of the joys of technology, we can say now, that with them constantly on WhatsApp, Kevin managed to pick up the phone, send a message saying, "I'm sinking, joking, Mayday," and that was it. He didn't even know if that message had sent by the time he disconnected from his boat, leaving the cockpit underwater and getting his life raft released. Just done some amazing interviews since of, you know, what he's learned from that, what his experience was, and of course then he spent 11 hours waiting to be found, and it was Yannick along with Boris, Sebastian Simon and Jean Le Cam looking for him, and it was Jean Le Cam that found him and rescued him.
So a lot to be learnt from that incident for the design in the future of these boats. What else have we learnt about the design? What would you say the big learning point has been for your team? Will?
I mean, such a big consideration, and what everyone really wanted to know going into this race was, what are these foils going to perform? How are they going to work in the Southern Ocean? And I think that there's so many designers and teams that are really going to go back to the scratch board, right back to the start, and have a detailed analysis and look into this race and see how they performed. You know, we didn't really know what they would be like in the Southern Ocean conditions, and it's been clear to see that they haven't been at the 20% faster than always expected. And certainly for our team, we'll be going back through that data and really looking at what do we actually want the boat shape to be like, and what do we want the foil shape to be like as well. Those are kind of the two main things. And then
plenty still to discuss. I've got to jump in there. Plenty still to discuss as we watch our winner of this 9th edition of the Vendée Globe giving yet another interview, one of many that he will be doing over the coming weeks. But it's the man we've been watching over the last hour, Yannick Bestaven, who at the end of a long duel up the Atlantic came out on top to make it an all-French podium in this edition of the Vendée Globe. Hope you've enjoyed our overnight coverage. The race continues, of course. There are still plenty of sailors out there still heading towards that finish line. And I hope we've managed to bring you a snapshot, really, of the excitement and the drama of this race over the last 10 hours or so. From Dee Kafari, Will Harris, and from me, Alec Wilkinson, it's au revoir, and we'll see you in Le Sable d'Olonne in 4 years' time.